How's it going?
He doesn't have a bear.
We
I
brought
did not have a bear. Was I supposed to get one of those at the conference last week?
Fischer
Right.
Risk Scout, right? So let's talk about something that's risky. And so we figured a bear was pretty risky. So we throw in here. Question for you, man. Little backstory time. So I caught wind from him that your family was one of the Stephen F. Austin original 300 that came to Texas. Is that right?
Yeah, man. And the funny thing is I was a longtime history buff, love the state of Texas, native Texan. Never knew it until I started doing some of that family, ancestry research.
Yes.
Randolph Foster was a scout for Stephen F. Austin during the Revolutionary War or in the Texas Revolution, but he also came over in the 300 colonists, and he didn't actually fight against Santa Anna, but he actually orchestrated all of what they called the sort of railroad of getting people, small farms closer to Mexico, up into Beaumont.
Our family ranch in Kyle, just south of Austin, and third longest running ranch continuously run by the same family.
So we
Right
know
around-
his history.
Yeah, so right around 1850. And so, I mean, what I've found from surrounding ranches and old families, almost everybody that, I think about my grandparents and all the other ranchers that they know, right? It always comes back to that Stephen F. story, and somebody knows somebody that goes, all the way back. You think about it. I was thinking about the Kirkendalls. Yeah.
And the whole thing, this comes all back around because my dad, he's literally, we stopped doing produce about 20 years ago, but it's just not profitable for a small farm. And he's going to retire back down to the land down there from Houston, and he's going to do hemp, and I'm like, well, your bank's not going to know what to do with you, right? It's not your fault, but we got to help educate. Hey, I've been doing this for 20 years in fintech for banks and credit unions. I've done all kinds of projects. I think I've done over 600 core conversions. You can see the whip marks on my back from the
that outnumbered mine by a mile.
Like core conversions, mergers, acquisitions. Even helped 3 banks in Kansas reverse acquire the Bank of America branch.
Yes.
And that was awesome because they were literally like, we're planting our flag and back on the branch in our local community, and Bank of America could take a hike. Well, the challenge on that side of it was Bank of America was going to take all the customers with them too. So we had to really get in there and negotiate and get that data right. But out of all that, my reputation is I'm here to help you find a solution. That solution may not be what's in my bag or in my cart, just so you know. It's to find you the right person. And if it's a competitor, it doesn't matter. If I can find you a solution, because more times than not, over 2 decades of doing that, you build good customer relationships. Yes. You find out more often than not that you can help, right? But the reality is it wastes a bunch of time if I'm trying to force a square peg in a round hole, right? So if I can help you get where you need to get, I can introduce them to you guys or introduce them to Mantle or whoever it may be, Jordan's group, I will get them in the right place.
I want to hear, man. So look, I understand a lot from your side and I like the way that you spin it, right? Focused on high risk compliance and that side of the house. And it's such a mess, right? For a lot of banks that have, customers and things that bring them stuff that's just, it feels like it's out of left field. How do I even begin? I think about that a lot in this banking as a service, sponsor banking side. Are a lot of the banks that you run into and work with, is that banking as a service area? Is that sort of an obvious fit for you? I would think so, right?
Yeah.
So high risk stuff.
Yeah, I think emerging markets, high risk in terms of going after it. So first of all, every bank in the country is threatened or has high risk types in their bank today. So it may not be him, but they probably are banking local farmers like my dad's farm, not even know it, because they're not going to be completely upfront with you about it. And that's not because they're trying to be deceptive or fraudulent, but they know that they get kicked out. So they say, I'm still doing farm crops and so forth. And it's fully legal in the US, hemp, by the way. A lot of people don't understand the difference between hemp and THC. But if we roll back for a second, ATMs, private ATMs without a bank logo, 60% of the country's ATMs are private. They're run by retirees, veterans. These are important financial elements of our market, right? Stimulus payments coming through. But the banks don't bank those in very large numbers, or MSBs, money service business. Fintechs are actually MSBs as well, because their poor BSA officer, who's usually in their late 40s to 60s, is for a $1 billion institution, you got maybe 2 of them, are completely overwhelmed, and they don't, their last thing they want to do is either end up in an orange jumpsuit, and they tell me that all the time, or they don't want to end up on the wrong side of the examiner table, right? And so the easiest thing to do is say no. Is to say, that sounds like something related to something else. I'm not going to do it at all. The problem is the devil's in the details, or the baby's in the bathwater. just talking to one of your banks in the Dallas area. I won't name names. A lot of times they're super sensitive about stuff we're talking about. But she said, yeah, we just did a $10 million portfolio loan to a guy who's got the strip center he built and all this other real estate. And come to find out, he's a minority owner in a CBD store, and he's going to put one of those CBD stores in there. And the BSA officer said, nope, it's illegal. And I said, well, first of all, it's not illegal, but my job is not to fight your BSA officers, to help them, to help educate them on what's going on now, because they're about to have to give up that customer who has nothing to do with THC in California, right? Has nothing to do with money laundering or Pablo Escobar or even Cheech and Chong. He's literally just trying to run businesses and trying to support the business in his market, right? And that's the problem. I mean, grocery stores are selling CBD. You're going to go kick them all out,
Yeah, the sophistication of the client base, when you've got opportunities, they're kind of like akin to the end of prohibition, right? And in that arena. And then there's other things I mentioned, the MSBs that are CDFIs. I mean, we go down the list of opportunities are out there for banks to make a lot of money, but the idea that I don't know anything about it, therefore the answer is no, rather than try to educate yourself. And then you've got guys like yourself that are here saying, I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm just trying to help you get educated.
Absolutely.
When you talk about like the roundup or whatever, be bankers helping bankers, all of this is what we're trying to do is connect. Here's the thing. I'm tired of seeing banks sell their bank because they can't figure out how to make money.
Yes.
And we're sitting here with guys like you that are like, how long a list do you want of ways to make a fortune?
Yeah.
There's a reason people are the greatest amount of capital in the history of the United States thrown at a particular industry was FinTech last year. So far this year, not even finished this year. And it's the greatest amount of capital that's ever gone into a particular. Why would that be?
Because there's so much opportunity, and I think just point, there's so much complexity. Bringing in outside folks that know those little silos of complexity, I love that.
Here's one of my problems though with the guys. I've been a technology guy on the side of it. So I work for Hank Seal. Probably know Hank Seal. Love the guy. Learned a lot about banking Main Street, not Wall Street. A lot of the values you guys have. He invested in one of my earlier businesses. I was involved in Q2 and yada yada yada. But one of the things that's challenging is, and I said it Wednesday night. I got bankers, CEOs who walk up to me and they go, "I want to do one of these," and I'm like, "You want to build an iPhone, right?" And I know I want to build an app. I want to do all this stuff, and I love it. I absolutely want it, but I also want to make sure that they work with partners where they can actually get that done. Because some of them, are underestimating what they're going to have to do just to build those apps. And not to mention, I like how Mike Fernandez said it, right? I've got an affinity group. We banked this before. We understand it. So we're going to go build on that foundation. These banks that are coming to me, which I love that they're progressive and they're thinking, I gotta build bigger, but they're not thinking that I'm about to basically launch a tech startup unless I go find the right partners and can do more. And part of my conversation is, let me introduce you to Dave and the guys. If you really want to do FinTech, there's lots we can do, or sponsor banks and examples. I also have another alternative. You can literally open up a channel to a market that's in your own backyard that you're not banking. That's actually, I was going to show you guys. I do talks for the Department of Agriculture across the country, and Texas Department of Agriculture is one of my local ones. I do these talks very, very like once every 6 months. These are all businesses just from Friday. These are hitting my website right now, asking for banks, and most of them are in Texas, or they're all over the country, but a lot of Texas banks. And I have a conversation with them, and just like my father, they're like, "Look, I started banking with Wells Fargo, and 2 years later, they're telling me, now I've got 20 employees, I'm trying to make payroll, and you're out just because of what you're doing. And I can't explain myself. My money's frozen." There's actually a Christmas tree farm up in New Jersey. This was one of my old Q2 customers, won't name them, but they didn't like this Christmas tree farm or seasonal farm. So, pumpkins right now, Christmas trees in December. They had a half acre of hemp, and you could grind it into your coffee. Basically, you didn't smoke it. It wasn't even CBD. By the way, you can buy on Amazon for the past 15 years, right? It's not a controlled substance. And the family bank called them in and said, "Hey, 25 years, I know you've been with us, but here's a check for your assets. And we're calling a $15,000 loan." The credit union jumped in there and grabbed them. And, I know the bankers will be like, those credit unions, they can do anything. Well, yeah, yes and no, but you can do it too. It's not that difficult. They're right in your own backyard. And if you're going to do one, you might as well go do 100 and put $40 million deposits in.
That's it right there.
Yep.
There's money everywhere. And the idea, real quick, when you were talking a second ago about basically the direct bank versus a sponsor bank, something I always ask the bankers, if you've got an affinity idea for a direct bank, write out me a bill. Just, I mean, nothing's hard. A business plan. Tell me what it is.
Mhm.
Well, we're not really sure what the affinity is. Then stop.
To
Stop till you get
Justin's
that part
point
figured out.
of why do one when you could go do a bunch,
Don't-
right? Think
yeah,
of it
don't
like starting a business.
But don't confuse this and banking as a service sponsor bank as the same thing. They're
Right.
actually separate things. And let's kind of take one step further back even than that, which is, have you exhausted all the cool ways to make money today?
Traditional ways.
This guy right here, the people that were on our first night panel that talked about different ways to make money. I could go on all day long of different opportunities out there that bankers aren't aware of. But to your point, what's the first thing we do? Say no or shut it off, forget about it. And it's like, hang on. So there's a ton of ways to make money. We can show them to you. There's a great opportunity to make a direct bank if you've got a pretty good idea, like Mike Fernandez. And then open a sponsor bank if you don't have an idea of how to do anything, and let the other people come with their products and their ideas and make money off of them channeling that through.
Yeah, and the place that we jump in there to help you guys, help them in that stake, is to actually do that compliance piece, right? Like to help that.
Part of all. The last thing you want to do is sell your bank charter. It is the most enriching quality you have. And if you don't know what to do with it, call Justin.
I agree. Yes. I heard from, if you guys caught on the last day, it was Tim was talking about sort of that brand question that I asked.
Choice bank.
Yeah. And I'm wondering, I'm hearing from a lot of bankers like, hey, I can do these other things, but it puts my brand secondary, right? And he's like, your brand's already toast.
Did you see the look on his face? He's like,
he looks around but he made a great point. He's like, you're competing with the Chimes of the world and you're basically getting slaughtered here. I think Justin and I have, and maybe this isn't a popular perspective, right? But from your background, let's say Q2, me at Malazai, I feel like we were very late in that fighting the good fight, trying to be, trying to compete with the nationals and a community bank from a technology standpoint. There's some wins and some losses, right? But what we're seeing now that's like, it's not a bad thing that, Q2, Malazai, others, it's not going to get you there to compete with Chime and Chase. That's not a bad thing. It's actually a great thing because it's forcing everybody to be niche focused, right? And find these affinities. And the revenues are off the charts, right? The people that are doing this well are making a fortune.
Yeah, exactly. I have a border bank in Texas. Again, I won't narrow them down too much yet because they're early on, but they literally brought me a bunch of convenience stores and different businesses that have ATMs. I don't know if you guys have seen this as well, but the Bitcoin terminals are popping up. Not only that, we work with the National ATM Council. About 30% of the devices that these independent ATM guys are using, because of a Bitcoin terminal popping up right next to them in the same store, they're asking their NCR and a bunch of the ATM manufacturers to actually provide those features. But they have no idea that the bank doesn't know what they're going to do with it. And so, all the people in that room, no doubt, at FedFizz would say, I'm in it. How can I make money off of it? Great. But you know what your BSA officer is going to say? And so you're going to have to, especially if you turn around and you bring 100 new ATM customers over and they've got to do the due diligence and the ongoing tracking. And that's where we've got an OCC examiner on staff. He just came out of the OCC. We've got a BSA officer of 20 years. And we sit down and say, look, we're not a vendor. We're not going to drop software and, goodbye, right? This stuff changes. We're going to sit with you and work through your policy. Then we're going to show you how you automate. And when we put automation in, all you're going to do is sit back and make good decisions. And it's going to come to you in terms of those decision flows. And one person can now handle 100 businesses instead of, 10 having to handle 100.
Justin says, let me just understand everything about me. Am I clear? We're all on the same page. And everybody goes, okay, you got it. Now what would you do? And what in the hell's a harm in listening to what this man has to say when he's done everything in the world and made everybody tons of money and nobody's gone to jail. Everybody's okay here. But what you decide to do is, I heard the word crypto, we're saying no to it. And we did the same thing with Venmo. We did the same thing with Cash App.
Can't afford to be late anymore.
Yeah. Well, another big problem in this space is that the regs haven't caught up. I know we were talking, I heard, your panel on Friday morning talking about the regs. Well, in these spaces, they haven't caught up. But that doesn't stop one institution. By the way, this institution, 3 years into the process right now. Prior to these 3 years, 50 years, they've been a $500 million credit union in the Colorado area. They're now doing $1.2 billion of new deposits every year, and then fees and everything else. $1.2 billion. Now, if you have a reasonable compliance program and you're in a legal state, and by hemp, by the way, is fully federally legal, no issue there. You got this many businesses coming at you, then your BSA officer is telling you no. Okay. Well, the value we have with our team is we're seeing all those exams. We're seeing those examiners. We're hearing the best practices. We're hearing what, we see them looking through our programs going, hey, that's better than I ever thought it would be. It's about a reasonable level of compliance that matches with your organization's risk, right? And so if you said, look, right now I've got, let's just say 10 hemp customers and just my local community, I don't know about growing. We come in and look at it and we go, yeah, you know what? If you're going to go hire, going to bring in another 10, you're going to need 2 more people. Then it's probably not a good economic story, right? Because you're doing it all hands on a keyboard, right? And then it's human error. You're going to miss something, or that person's going to retire. That's actually a big risk for BSA right now. They're getting close to retirement, right? What are you going to do? Tell you, don't do what I saw a bank do the other day under compliance review, and they bring in a teller who's 23 years old, and she just got her ACAM certification and said, here you go. That's going to be killer. You're going to kill your bank doing that. But what if we can come in and say, instead of hiring 2 more, we can automate 80% of this overhead? It looks like old loan process. Remember mortgage used to go to the branch, you'd sit down, and then you'd have this whole file of due diligence on yourself and take them 10 weeks and they come back. Well, that's how a lot of these banks were doing it before software. They were basically having to go through that. So the average BSA officer out there says, I don't know clear regs, so I don't know what I don't know. And there's a mountain of paperwork for me to do. And I don't have, there's just no way. Even if I say I'm good with it, there's just no way. And that's part of the education process. The other part is, it's not Cheech and Chong and Pablo Escobar. It's your local family farmer, right? Like my dad, who's just trying to make profit.
And all I'm saying is, before you throw in the damn towel because you think it's over your head, why don't you give somebody, him, us, anybody a call? We'll give you his phone number. Have a conversation. He's not going to charge you $1 million to say hello and talk on the phone for a few minutes and maybe calm this where you're like, I thought those were 4 different things. No, that's what the misinformation crowd has done to confuse you so badly.
Intentionally.
You can't pick an apple off a tree and take a bite of it anymore because you're petrified that, well, was that it sounds like I've crossed a line somewhere.
Right. And he's actually saying he's actually the opportunity guy. Right.
Yeah. And I want to tell you real quick, there's a bank that she really wanted to be there, Westtown Bank. She's a $300 million bank in North Carolina. She chartered in Illinois so she can work across the country. And she went out and said, if we're going to do 1 or 2 in North Carolina, then we're going to do them all. So she set out about 2 years ago to be the National Hemp Bank. I gotta tell you this, she was doing 5 for these businesses, doing their whole paperwork in a branch. Take about 10 weeks to open. And then the pandemic hit. She had no branches open, right? So it was even more difficult to come in and out. I don't know if you guys looked around, but there's not a lot of business onboarding solutions out there. A couple of our partners are trying, but there's nothing out there. So we built that as part of the risk systems. That's weird for people. They're like, well, wait, it doesn't sit in the back office. No, we actually have funnels, like full applications. You can do Texas CBD differently than California, THC to whatever. So she leveraged that. And she sees now, I'm not kidding you guys, 130 new businesses a month from all across the country. And they just filter through her process and they get open in about 2 days. And then she put on merchant processing on top of that. She gets the full rate of 5% merchant processing because Square can't keep anybody in their portfolio. They keep kicking them out. So she picks them up and says, look, I'm not going to bank you on what you're doing. I'm going to bank you on who you are. And if I like who you are and you follow from a relationship perspective, bring your money, bring your portfolio, we will give you loans, insurance, merchant processing, and DDA accounts right in the hemp space. I think the biggest thing is I think guys like you, guys like me, we're here to create solutions, to teach and share knowledge. And if it's helpful for you, I want to see you grow. I do not want to see money center banks, dominate here. I don't want to see our numbers. I mean, I did international banking. It is not great when you only have 12 banks in the whole country, right? You need that diversity in banking. And so I really want to see this market continue to grow. And I think there's lots of ways, but you're going to have to do it a different way than what you've been doing. I think I will give you one last little statement here. There's some great authors on this subject, but one of the reasons they say America is going to stay very strong is our conceptual thinking and our ability to use the human element with technology. And I think that's really important, right? That these banks can't grow at the scale of some of these other larger money center banks. Can't put the technology forces. I've seen it with the cybersecurity side too. It's a real risk, crypto, and so, there is the value that we have in this space is helping institutions to leverage what they have. I don't think, and you can mark my words, that in the next 5 years, maybe even 8 to 10 years, that artificial intelligence is going to replace BSA decisions, compliance decisions on these things just quite yet. You'll maybe for a number of deals, but I don't know if you ever saw the numbers on Simple Bank. A lot of their and you guys mentioned it about Chime, a lot of the accounts that are being opened are actually artificially are opened, and they're being caught by artificial intelligence that says it's completely fraud. So a human is have to be involved, and the best humans in this sector, in all financial services, are in community banks and credit unions. That's it. Like, how can we help them do what they do best?
That's it in a nutshell.
it.
Justin, thanks so much.
Thank you guys. I appreciate it.
All right, buddy.
Hey,
We'll
thanks
see
for
you.
riding with the Cowboys.
Take care, guys.